the third instalment in my 4-part series talking through the best players in each position in FPL. This time, we're talking midfielders. Alright, so this video is going to be laid out pretty much the same as all the other ones. I'm going to talk through the various price categories, give you all the stats, fixtures, etc., but also give a little bit of my opinion. So you get the best of both worlds, really. You get all the stats to help you come to your own decisions, and then also I'm going to provide a bit of my opinion as well. So the first category we're going to cover, I've called premium midfielders in this game, anyone 9.5 million above. So we've got Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, De Bruyne and Foden. Looking at this list, I would recommend pretty much any one of these players, genuinely, apart from probably Kevin De Bruyne. Now, I do like Kevin De Bruyne. I think probably one of the best players in the Premier League, right? But his returns are just so much more weighted towards assists than they are goals. 10 assists from 15 starts right in managed last season. That's obviously absolutely brilliant. But you get less points for assists than you do goals. And last season, obviously the Champions League final a couple of years ago, and last season proved that he does appear to be a little bit injury prone now. And I would avoid injury prone players in this game, particularly if they're coming in at 9.5 million. And you look at the other players' stats, for example, I don't know, Salah, Palmer, Saka, they all beat him for expected returns per 90, and obviously all have more goals as well. So that's just an important stat that I like to look at. Salah is one of a few players in the league, I think one of two. Him and Haaland are the only players with above 1 expected returns per 90. 18 goals, 12 assists from 28 starts. Up first, he's got Ipswich in game week 1, which I'd argue he's probably the best captain in game week 1, alongside maybe Isak. Ipswich away is a really good fixture. I don't really back the 3 promoted teams to do very well this season. I think they're going to concede a lot of goals. Then he's got Brentford, and then Man United away. He's always got a good record against Man United. So that's a good set of fixtures for, well, a player with 30 attacking returns from 28 starts. The only sort of doubt I would say about Salah is we just don't know how Liverpool are going to play under their new manager. I imagine they set up in a similar fashion, right? They've got so many good attacking players, it almost guarantees Slot is going to play a 4-3-3. Salah's obviously going to be on the right wing, but new manager, new means a new pecking order amongst the squad, etc. So could that mean potentially Salah's minutes get reduced if he gets off to a disappointing start, something like that? Just something to bear in mind. Cole Palmer, obviously 33 attacking returns from 29 starts, just under 1 expected returns per 90, purely because he massively outscored his own expected goals data and expected assist data. Saka, 18 from 35, decent, absolute 90-minute man, right? Say 18, it's 28, isn't it, from 35? Absolute 90-minute man, obviously on penalties, Arsenal's talisman. Son, 17 goals from only 11.5 XG, might cause some concern if you're looking at that, but Son historically, he always outperforms his underlying data when it comes to XG. He's just that good of a finisher. Already covered De Bruyne. And then Phil Foden, he got 19 goals in the Premier League last year from only 10 expected goals. Now, I'm not denying that Phil Foden is a wonderful footballer, but only knocking up 10 XG and scoring 19 goals, it would just make me question, could he quite repeat the numbers that he did last season? Just a question. So like I said, I've put those little symbols next to the players of ones that I pick and ones that I'd avoid. Ultimately, I think all of these players are pickable in your team. De Bruyne is the only one I'd probably ignore. I just think Foden's better. He's got a better injury record and his returns are way more weighted towards goals than Kevin De Bruyne. So for that reason, I'd probably say Phil Foden is the best Man City mid. Ultimately, though, like I said, you could pick all of them. I'd probably say Salah is my favourite, with obviously the captaincy in game week 1 in mind. Palmer's probably second. I'd probably say Son and Saka are close, although I just got a feeling Son outscores Saka this season, and then Foden, and then De Bruyne. Alright, so that's the premiums out of the way. Next up, we've got a couple of midfielders in at 8.5 million, and there is very little to split the two of them. Bruno Fernandes and Martin Odegaard, of course, of Arsenal. Both players played 35 games, 10 goals for Bruno, 8 goals for Odegaard, 9 assists for Bruno, 11 assists for Odegaard. So in total, their total returns, they're both at 19. So that kind of shows they're pretty equal. 0.58 expected returns per 90 for Bruno, 0.52 for Odegaard. I'd say the quality of the fixtures are pretty similar for the first 3. The one thing I would say that gives Bruno an advantage is he's just the guaranteed Man United penalty taker. And we also saw towards sort of the back end of the season, Odegaard getting subbed a few times. He didn't necessarily play 90 minutes every game, whereas Bruno Fernandes, he's just that guaranteed 90-minute man, takes penalties, free kicks, all the set pieces, you name it. And I would say his underlying creative stats, which I haven't showed here, are one of the best in world football, not just the Premier League, whereas Odegaard's probably a little bit less in terms of total chances created. It just so happened that Man United, well, at the start of the season at least, didn't actually have a centre forward. And then Højlund, still a bit young, a little bit green when he started. We obviously know how many games he went without scoring. There was a whole meme about that, right? So I would like to think that Man United and Bruno will be improved this season. And with that in mind, the fact he takes penalties, I'd probably just give him the edge over Odegaard. But it wouldn't be a massive surprise if Odegaard did outscore him. It goes without saying, though, I think both of these players are very much pickable in your FPL side. Like I said, I personally prefer Bruno Fernandes. If you prefer Odegaard, there's not really a strong argument either way. I think I've made one, but doesn't necessarily mean it's bulletproof. Both of these players will serve you really well in your teams. And I think, looking at 19 attacking returns across a season for 8.5 million, that's really good value. Okay, next up, we've got a bunch of 7.5 million mids. There are 5 in the game. Bowen, Diogo Jota, Anthony Gordon, Luis Diaz, and James Maddison. On the face of it, looking at these stats, 10 goals, 7 assists from 14 starts from Diogo Jota looks really good. However, I just have complete doubt, basically, bar Salah, who plays in that Liverpool front line. For the 2 other positions, they've got 4 players, Diaz, Jota, and Darwin Núñez. And Gakpo. So that's the 4 for 2 positions. And I just think it's so just up in the air as to who exactly is going to play. If we get, say, 4 or 5 games into the season and it's becoming pretty clear who that first choice front 3 is for Liverpool, then maybe, the likes of Jota, Diaz, Darwin and Gakpo, of course, forwards in this game. But one or two of them emerge as like outstanding options. But right now, I feel it's impossible to decide or predict how Liverpool are going to line up. So yes, the stats for Jota look really, really good. Diaz, not too bad either, but I just don't think you can pick them because their team is so unpredictable. Jared Bowen put up some really good numbers last year. 16 goals, 6 assists, 34 starts. He ticks all the boxes for me of a really good FPL asset. 90-minute man, plays every game, sometimes even when he's injured. I'd also question who is going to be the West Ham penalty taker after Paqueta leaves. I mean, Paqueta's just in the mud, right, in terms of his career with the betting scandal he's involved in. I don't think he's going to play for West Ham again. So does that open the door potentially for Jared Bowen to be the West Ham penalty taker? Just ask the question. One thing that would kind of put me off is those opening fixtures. Villa, Palace, Man City, definitely not the easiest, particularly at home against Man City. Villa are obviously a Champions League team and Palace are particularly strong at home. They're also much improved under their new manager. So stats-wise, all the sort of on-paper things for Bowen as an FPL asset are really good. It's just those first fixtures that would kind of put me off. Anthony Gordon, though, he's got a really good start to the season. Southampton, Bournemouth, and then Tottenham, who I think will concede a fair few goals this season in his 3rd game. 27 attacking returns from 34 starts last season. Really, really good numbers. I think he's first choice in that front line at Newcastle, so I think he's a really good option. James Maddison, again, decent start, similar to what we're seeing with Gordon. I just don't think he gets enough returns to be worth it in FPL. Kind of started last season, he was a good asset, and then he got injured, and after the injury, he just kind of dropped off a little bit. And what you can see there, he kind of overperformed his expected assists and underperformed his expected goals. So I just don't think with that level of returns you can justify picking him. So for me, I would say Bowen and Gordon are the outstanding ones. Maddison is definitely pickable, but I would avoid Jota and Luis Diaz. I should have showed this stat where I said it. I don't really like Maddison, but I don't think I can make a 100% strong argument to avoid him. Whereas Luis Diaz and Jota, you can't guarantee they're going to play. So I don't think you can pick them for that reason. And then Bowen and Gordon, definitely pickable and worth buying. I would just say those opening fixtures for Bowen are just a little bit tough. So if there was one 7.5 million midfielder I could recommend you pick, it's Anthony Gordon. Now, there are so many 6.5 million midfielders in FPL that I couldn't possibly talk about every single one of them. So what I've done is I've filtered, how many I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. I've taken what I think are my 10 favourites at this price point. Okay, we've got Leon Bailey, Mitoma, and Nkunku, Rodri, Garnacho, Gibbs White, Kudus, Hwang, Neto, and Rice. I would say these guys are probably my favourite picks at this price point. And looking at the drafts I've seen on Twitter and YouTube, etc., most people have a player of this price point. Leon Bailey of Villa is a good option in my mind. The level of returns he got last season was really good. I would just say, though, can't be 100% sure that he's going to play every game, particularly with Aston Villa being in the Champions League. Although the start of the season, those 3 fixtures to open up, he probably does play. Mitoma obviously played with injury last season. Brighton with a new manager, plenty of options in their front line. Again, can't be 100% sure that he plays. Nkunku, I really like him as an option. He's got the best expected returns per 90 stat of all the players at 6.5 million, even though he only made 2 starts. He scored 3 goals last season, by the way, from those 2 starts. I think he's a good option, and I just don't see a world in which Nkunku doesn't start for Chelsea. We'll probably get a bit more info from these pre-season games. You know, if he's in the team for, say, the last couple of pre-season games, that suggests to me that he's probably going to start the first game of the Premier League. Man City at home first up for Chelsea is obviously a tough fixture, but then Wolves and Palace after that I think is pretty good. Rodri got one of the lowest expected returns per 90 stats on here, but he's still got 18 attacking returns last season. And the thing with Rodri is he just plays every game, so you can just stick him in your team, set and forget him, and just wait for him to get those 10. I'd say he probably gets around 15 returns this season. Garnacho, 7 goals, 7 assists. I think he's definitely going to be starting for Man United, right? Not sure he's explosive enough or had enough returns last season quite yet to justify picking him in FPL, particularly at 6.5 million. But give him time. You know, again, similar to Rashford, if we see 3 or 4 games in, he's absolutely banging in the goals and looking really, really strong, then maybe that's the time to bring him in. Gibbs White of Nottingham Forest. I think he's going to be like a talisman in terms of free kicks and pens. 5 goals, 12 assists for him last season. Bournemouth, Southampton, Wolves is a really good opening set of fixtures. And I don't think all that many people are going to be selecting Morgan Gibbs-White. So he's got some decent numbers and some really decent fixtures. So he could be a nice differential. Kudus of West Ham massively overperformed his XG and expected assist data. 8 goals, 9 assists from 27 games. But those XG and XA stats were really, really low. So I would question, can he repeat those numbers this season? And with West Ham having those really tough fixtures, Villa, Palace, Man City to open up, I'd probably avoid him. Hwang and Neto both playing for Wolves. You can see their returns are basically shifted. Goals for Hwang, assists for Neto. I just don't think you can pick a Wolves attacker given those opening fixtures. Arsenal and Chelsea first 2 is just really, really tough. And then Declan Rice, I'm just not sure he had enough returns last season to be pickable. I think, he's obviously a good option, but I'd probably avoid him. So players at this price point, I think you should buy. Bailey, Nkunku, Garnacho is definitely pickable. I think he's going to play for Man United. Gibbs White, and I would say Neto, because from only 18 starts, he got 13 attacking returns, which is really, really good. So I suggest Angus. I think he's an absolutely wonderful player, and he's going to play every game that he's fit for Wolves. So I probably would say Neto is pickable. So yeah, that's the 6.5 million mids. Going down to 6 million, I put in a fair bit less effort into talking about these players because ultimately, I just don't think they're worth going for. Dewsbury Hall and Gallagher of Chelsea probably play, but they don't excite me enough. Anthony, I don't need to say anything about him at Man United. Almiron and Joel Linton, I don't think they're worth picking. And Paquetá, I spoke about how his career in England could basically be in the mud with the betting scandal that he's in. So genuinely, all 6 of these 6 million mids, I'd probably just avoid. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them. We do also have an absolute bunch of 5.5 million midfielders as well. And all of them, I think, have their own sort of upsides. And I've actually seen quite a lot of teams with a 5.5 million mid in them. Hudson-Odoi appears to be the most popular. But when you compare him to Elanga, I think Elanga's actually putting up the better numbers. Hudson-Odoi scored 8 goals from only 2.6 XG last season. So it would suggest to me that he wasn't actually, part of many great goal-scoring opportunities. Whereas Elanga, he was involved in a bit more, and per 90, his expected return stats were a little bit better. So I would actually suggest that Elanga is a better option than Hudson-Odoi. Andreas Pereira of Fulham, 12 attacking returns from 34 games, 0.36 expected returns per 90. Really decent numbers. Man United up first, then they got Leicester and Ipswich, the 2 promoted teams after that. I think that's a really decent set of fixtures for Fulham. And obviously, we've spoken about the Nottingham Forest fixtures. They're really good as well. McNeil and Harrison of Everton. I would say McNeil's probably the stronger Everton midfielder and kind of competing really with the likes of Elanga, Pereira, and yeah, Alanga and Andreas Pereira in terms of expected returns per 90, they all look like decent pickable options. I wouldn't quite say the same about Jack Harrison. He's just a little bit lower in terms of those expected returns. And Ciso of Brighton only made 5 starts last season. He's very heavily backed and suggested that he's a really good player. I can't remember if it was the start of last season or the end of the season before that where he banged in some... Well, it couldn't have been last season because he scored 0 goals. And then he got obviously injured. 0.52 expected returns per 90 is the best of any player at this price point. So if he's fit and looking to be starting for Brighton, he's probably the best option at this price point. Just those fixtures are a little bit tough to kick off with. Adingra, I just don't think you can pick him over Enciso if Enciso is in the team. And I've seen he's heavily rumoured to be leaving. Semenyo and Kluivert of Bournemouth. Semenyo seems to be a really popular asset in this game, but looking at the stats and the underlying numbers actually suggests that Kluivert is potentially a better pick. And then I put John McGinn in here as well, because with Douglas Luiz leaving Aston Villa, they don't currently have a penalty taker. And John McGinn is the Scotland national team penalty taker. Obviously, they have Ollie Watkins too. I would say potential Villa penalty taker is between John McGinn and Ollie Watkins. If it goes to John McGinn, 6 goals, 5 assists, all obviously from open play, plus penalties on top, so he gets 4 penalties this season. That boosts him up to sort of 10 goals, 5 assists, 15 attacking returns, which is on a level of other players at this price point. We all know Douglas Luiz at times last season, with the amount of penalties Villa was getting and the amount of them he was scoring, he became a genuinely pickable FPL option, and the same could happen this year with John McGinn. So right now, I would genuinely say I would pick pretty much any of these players from this list. Jack Harrison, I'm a little bit put off by just because his numbers aren't quite as good as McNeil. But honestly, Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, Pereira, McNeil, and Ciso, I'd probably avoid Adingra and probably Semenyo as well, because you can't guarantee that Semenyo is actually going to start every game. Kluivert and McGinn are pickable as well. So yeah, that's your 5.5 million mids. Now, at 5 million, there's only one that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm not 100% sure yet that he's going to be starting every game for Aston Villa, but Morgan Rogers, I think, is heavily touted to have a really decent breakthrough season. Only made 8 starts last season, but he got 4 attacking returns from those 8 starts. Villa, apart from that Arsenal game, have decent opening fixtures. He's been touted on Twitter by a few FPL players that he could potentially be the next Cole Palmer, coming in at 5 million and just absolutely producing outrageous returns in comparison to his price. And with Villa potentially selling Diaby to Saudi Arabia, could that mean Rodgers is more of a nailed-on player in their starting 11? If he is, I think he could be a decent option at 5 million. But ultimately, at this price point, he's the only one I'd realistically entertain. And finally, just to talk through the 4.5 million mids, I reckon there's a couple you could pick. The strong one being Harry Winks, right? Harry Winks played pretty much all bar 1 game for Leicester in the Championship last year. He's not very attacking, only got 2 goals, 0.1 expected returns per 90, but he's going to play every game. And I think a 4.5 million midfielder, all you need to know about them is that they're going to start every game, because when you need them, they're just there for their 2 points, right? If you want to be a bit different, Hamza Chowdhury as well was a regular for them in the Championship. Obviously, just made a few less appearances than Winks did. But every time I saw Leicester play, he was in the starting lineup. I think he's one of the first choice players when he's fit. He offered absolutely nothing, though, from an attacking perspective. So Winks, I'd honestly say, if you're looking at a 4.5 million midfielder, there's only one really. I'd just pick Winks and not worry about it. All right, and that's the end of the video. That was a lot of effort to make that one. So if you appreciate all the graphics, all the stats, etc. that I pulled together for you there, please leave me a like rating on this video. Just to say again, I'm partnered this season with Fantasy Football Hub. Once I get the best players by position video series out of the way, I'll do a team selection using the AI team selector tool, and you can see Fantasy Football Hub in all its glory. But if you want to look ahead of time, they're doing a money back offer if you don't win your Millie League, and you get 50% off with my discount code. So the link for that is in the description. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more from me, obviously I'm going to have plenty of FPL, pretty much daily FPL content coming before the end of the season. You can subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just here on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.